They called her damaged goods right to her face. As if she couldn't hear them, Sarah Winters sat in her crude wheelchair in Copper Gulch's muddy square, her body broken, but her eyes burning with a defiance that made the townspeople shift uncomfortably. Mason Blackwood, the saloon owner who fancied himself king of this mountain settlement, didn't even lower his voice when he declared, "She's half a person. What use are you to anybody?" The crowd's nervous laughter cut deeper than the accident that had stolen her legs. But when Hope Jenkins stepped forward, a man who'd buried his own family and sworn never to care again, something passed between them that neither could name. "She's not garbage," Hope said quietly, his hand steady on her wheelchair. "I'll take her." What neither knew was that Mason Blackwood had secrets buried deeper than the mines that had crushed Sarah's body. Secrets worth killing to protect. And in this forgotten corner of the Wild West, justice would come at a price that would transform them all. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. The stagecoach arrived in Copper Gulch late that spring afternoon of 1885, wheels slinging mud from the record snowmelt. I was checking a lame mare at the livery when I heard Otis from the general store calling my name. Something in his voice, urgency tinged with discomfort, made me set down my tools immediately. I stepped into weak mountain sunshine to find a crowd gathered around the stage. Their faces were pinched with the kind of shame that comes from witnessing something ugly but being unable to look away. "She's damaged goods, driver," Mason Blackwood was saying, his voice carrying across the square. As the saloon owner and self-appointed leader of our settlement, Mason's word carried weight. "We can't be responsible for invalids here." That's when I saw her. The driver and his assistant struggled to lower a woman from the coach. Her body was frail, but her back remained straight. Dark hair pulled severely from a face that hadn't seen a proper meal in weeks. Her legs hung useless, but her eyes, those eyes held enough fire to burn down half the Rockies. "My sister's letter said there would be lodging," she said, her voice stronger than her body suggested. "I have money to pay." Mason laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut. "Money don't matter. You're half a person. What use are you to anybody?" Something in my chest tightened like a fist. "That's enough, Mason." The woman's eyes found mine, and something passed between us, recognition, not of faces, but of souls that had seen darkness. "Sarah Winters," she said, addressing me directly. "My husband died in the Leadville mine collapse. I was injured in the same accident." "She can't walk," the driver added unnecessarily. "Says she's come to be a schoolteacher." "But," Mason snorted, "a crippled schoolteacher. Who'll control the children?" I looked at Sarah Winters, at the rigid way she held herself, refusing to bend even as the world tried to break her. I'd seen that look before, in my mirror, after I buried my wife and son in the epidemic of '79. "She'll stay with me," I said, the words coming before I'd fully formed the thought. The silence fell like an avalanche. "Hope Jenkins, you've lost your mind," old Martha Parsons said, clutching her shawl. "What you want with a broken woman?" I stepped closer to the stage, meeting Sarah's gaze. "I've got the old cabin behind my place. It's not much, but it's got a view of the valley." Sarah studied me, looking for the catch. "Why would you help me?" I didn't have a clever answer. Just the truth. "Because we don't throw away people in Copper Gulch. At least, we shouldn't." Her chin lifted a fraction. "I don't want charity." "Good," I replied, "because I'm not offering any. You said you're a teacher. This town hasn't had one in 3 years. You teach. You earn your keep. The wagon ride to my ranch was silent, each of us lost in thoughts of what we'd begun. Neither of us knew then that Mason Blackwood had his own reasons for wanting Sarah Winters gone, or that her arrival would unearth secrets buried deeper than the richest veins of silver in our mountains. The rain came steady for days after Sarah's arrival, turning the world to silver sheets against the cabin windows. I built a ramp to her door, my hands sure despite the weather. Sometimes I'd catch her watching from inside, her pride warring with gratitude. Sarah organized her meager belongings with precision, books arranged by subject, clothing folded neatly, writing materials aligned on a small table, each item placed with careful purpose, as if creating order in her small space might compensate for the chaos that had claimed her legs. I kept my distance, leaving supplies outside her door with a simple knock. One evening, watching her struggle to reach a high shelf, I nearly intervened, but something stopped me, the fierce concentration in her eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw. An hour later, she'd fashioned a tool from a broom handle, her ingenuity overcoming what her body couldn't do. I walked away before she could see me, understanding that her independence meant more than convenience. "You need wheels that work better," I said the next day, eyeing her crude chair. "The ones you've got won't handle our terrain." "Is that your professional opinion, Mr. Jenkins?" A hint of smile touched her lips. "It's hope," I reminded her. "And yes, it is. I built wagon wheels before I started ranching. I can't afford. We'll work something out." In my workshop, I sketched designs for a sturdier chair with larger wheels. When Sarah visited to see my progress, she noticed photographs on a shelf, Mary and Thomas. I didn't explain, but my expression when she looked away told her enough. The next day, Ezra Thompson stopped by, fingering his tarnished lawman's badge nervously. "You stirred up a hornet's nest." "Hope," he said, watching me work. "Mason's been asking questions about your teacher." I set down my pencil. "What kind of questions?" "About her husband. The mine accident. Says things don't add up." Ezra shifted uncomfortably. "Mason sent a telegram to Leadville yesterday. Seems mighty concerned for a man who wanted to send her packing." That night, I found Sarah surrounded by papers, hair escaping its pins, ink smudged on her cheek. "I've been going through Jacob's papers," she said without preamble. "My husband kept records of everything at the mine." "What kind of records?" Her eyes met mine, sharp and clear. "The kind that get men killed." Jacob noticed discrepancies, money disappearing, safety equipment never delivered, but paid for. "And the mine collapsed," she nodded. 3 weeks after he confronted the owner, 17 men died, including Jacob. The support beam that fell on me wasn't properly reinforced. Jacob had documented it. "You think it wasn't an accident?" "I know it wasn't," Sarah said quietly. "What I don't know is why someone in Copper Gulch would care about a mine collapse in Leadville." 2 days later, old Martha Parsons appeared in my workshop doorway. "Before Mason came here," she whispered, "he was in Leadville, called himself Martin Black then, owned shares in several mines, including the one that collapsed," I finished, my hands going still. That night, as moonlight silvered the yard, I moved Sarah's belongings into my house. The cabin was too isolated, too vulnerable. "People will talk," she protested, as I carried her across the threshold. "Let them," I answered. "I'd rather have gossip than a grave." The schoolhouse was a single room attached to the church, dusty from disuse and smelling of old hymnals and mouse droppings. I spent 3 days cleaning it, building a platform so Sarah could teach from her wheelchair, and constructing a ramp at the entrance. "You didn't have to do all this," she said when I showed her the finished space. "Yes, I did," I replied simply. The children came on a Monday morning, 12 of them ranging from 5 to 15 years old. Their parents hung back, curious and skeptical in equal measure. How could a woman who couldn't stand command respect from their wild mountain offspring? Sarah answered that question within the first hour. I watched from outside as she called the class to order, her voice clear as a bell on Sunday morning. "I cannot chase you," she told them candidly. "I cannot reach the highest shelves without help, but my mind works perfectly well, and so do my eyes and ears. And if you think my condition makes me soft, you'll find yourself sadly mistaken." By lunchtime, the children were seated in orderly rows, reciting their letters with surprising enthusiasm. By week's end, even the most skeptical parents had to admit that Sarah Winters might be broken in body, but as a teacher, she was whole and formidable. Mason Blackwood was the exception. He cornered me outside the livery, face flushed with whiskey and something darker. "You're making a mistake, Jenkins," he said. "That woman is trouble." "Seems to me she's just doing her job," I countered, continuing to brush down my horse. Mason stepped closer. "I heard she's living in your house now. Mighty charitable of you." "Nothing charitable about it. The cabin roof leaks." He laughed, an ugly sound. "You warming your bed with a half-woman, Hope? Didn't think you were that desperate." I set down the brush very carefully. "You want to step back, Mason." "Or what? You'll defend her honor?" He spat on the ground. "She's just a crippled widow with delusions of—" My fist connected with his jaw before I'd made a conscious decision to swing. He sprawled in the dirt, blood trickling from his lip, eyes wide with surprise. "Don't talk about her like that," I said quietly. "Not ever again." Word spread through Copper Gulch like wildfire. By evening, Sarah had heard. She wheeled herself into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner, her face a storm of emotions. "You hit Mason Blackwood because of me." I concentrated on slicing bread. "I hit Mason Blackwood because he needed hitting. I don't need you to fight my battles. Hope." I set down the knife. "I know that, but some battles are mine too." I told her what Martha had shared about Mason's past in Leadville, his connection to the mine, his sudden departure after the collapse. Sarah went very still. "He was there," she whispered. "I remember him now. He came to the hospital once, watching me from the doorway. He knows I have Jacob's records. And he'll try to get them," I said, "or destroy them, and you with them." That night, I cleaned my rifle and loaded my revolver. Sarah watched, organizing Jacob's papers, copying key information onto smaller sheets she could hide. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. "My wife and son died because the doctor was too drunk to treat them properly. Everyone knew he had a problem, but no one stood up to him." I checked the action on my revolver. "I've lived with that guilt for 6 years. I won't stand by again while someone with power hurts people who can't defend themselves. I'm sorry about your family. I'm sorry about your husband." Later, as we sat by the fire, Sarah told me more about Jacob, his kindness, his meticulous nature, his belief in doing what was right. I spoke of Mary and little Thomas, of the joy they'd brought and the emptiness they'd left. "We're quite the pair, aren't we?" Sarah said softly. "Both half alive." I looked at her, firelight catching the copper strands in her dark hair. Maybe that's why we recognized each other. Summer came to the mountains. wildflowers carpeting the meadows, and the days stretching long and golden. I built Sarah a small cart that could be pulled by a gentle mare, giving her the freedom to move beyond the ranch and schoolhouse. Sarah's school thrived, the children's progress evident in their proud recitations and the books they carried home. Parents who initially doubted her now greeted her with respect when collecting their children. But Mason Blackwood's opposition grew. He refused service at the saloon to any parent who sent their children to the cripple's classroom. He spread rumors that Sarah was teaching radical ideas, turning children against their parents with notions about equality and justice. "He's afraid," Sarah said one evening as we sat on the porch, watching lightning play across distant peaks. "The longer I stay, the more likely someone will connect him to Leadville." I nodded. "And the children are taking home what they learn, questions, ideas. Knowledge is dangerous to men like Mason," she agreed. Almost as dangerous as evidence. News arrived that Judge Harmon would soon visit Copper Gulch on his circuit. His reputation as an unbribable man with connections to the territorial governor offered our first real chance at justice. "If we can get Jacob's evidence to the judge," Sarah explained, "Mason can be charged formally. The mine owners, too." We prepared our case carefully, organizing Jacob's records and Sarah's testimony. Our evenings working together created a quiet intimacy, sharing meals, discussing strategy, occasionally allowing our hands to touch when reaching for the same document. The day before the judge's arrival, I had to check the herd in the upper pasture. Sarah insisted she would be fine alone, pointing out that we couldn't live in fear indefinitely. I returned to find the front door splintered, the house in disarray. My heart nearly stopped until I heard a faint sound from the root cellar. I wrenched open the trap door to find Sarah at the bottom, her chair overturned above, her body bruised but her eyes blazing with triumph. "I led him away from the papers," she gasped as I lifted her carefully. "He thought I was hiding in the cellar. When he came down, I pushed the ladder away and myself with it." "Where is he now?" "Unconscious. I hit him with a preserving jar when he tried to climb out." Sure enough, Carver, one of Mason's men, lay sprawled on the dirt floor. I bound him tightly and locked him in the tool shed, then returned to tend Sarah's injuries. "You could have been killed," I said, gently cleaning a cut on her forehead. "So could you, every time you stand up to Mason," she countered. "At least now we have proof he's coming after us." I cupped her face in my hands before I could think better of it. "Sarah, I couldn't bear it if something happened to you." Her eyes widened slightly. "Hope. I know this isn't the time, but I need you to understand what's at stake for me." She caught my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "I do understand, because it's the same for me." The confession hung between us, neither of us ready to name the feeling that had been growing since that first day. There was too much at stake, too many ghosts still haunting us both. By morning, Carver had escaped his bonds, and Mason Blackwood was waiting for us with something potentially more damaging than violence, the truth about Sarah's past, twisted to serve his purpose. Judge Harmon spent 3 days reviewing Jacob's documents, interviewing Sarah, and sending telegrams to Leadville. During this time, Mason barricaded himself in the saloon with his remaining loyal men. When Ezra Thompson attempted to serve arrest papers, Mason's men nearly shot him. "The judge believes me," Sarah told me that evening, her voice tight with tension. "He's issued warrants for the mine owners in Leadville. But Mason won't be taken alive. He knows if he's arrested, he'll hang for those 17 deaths. 18, Sarah corrected quietly. Jacob died later, from his injuries. The decision was made for us at dawn when a ranch hand pounded on our door with urgent news. Mason and his men had set fire to the schoolhouse during the night. The building was a total loss. We arrived to find the charred ruins still smoldering. Parents and children gathered in shocked silence. The destruction of Sarah's work, the books, the children's progress charts, the maps I had carefully mounted at wheelchair height was a deliberate attack on what she had built. "He's sending a message," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "Destroying what I built, just like he destroyed Jacob." I knelt beside her chair. "We'll rebuild it, better than before." Her determination hardened into resolve. "Not while he's free." This ends today. Judge Harmon assembled a posse, myself, Ezra, and 5 other men from town. We surrounded the saloon, calling for Mason to surrender peacefully. The only answer was a shotgun blast that splintered the sign above Ezra's head. Sarah wheeled herself forward, despite my attempt to hold her back. "Give me an hour. Let me talk to him." "That's suicide," I protested. "He won't shoot me, not in front of witnesses. His only hope now is to seem reasonable, to cast doubt on the evidence. And if you get inside, he'll have a hostage." "He'll have a witness," Sarah corrected. "Someone who can testify to whatever he says or does. He knows that." Judge Harmon reluctantly agreed with Sarah's logic. The scene built tension as Sarah wheeled herself to the saloon doors, her back straight, her head high. After tense negotiation through the locked door, Mason allowed her inside, leaving me to wait in agonizing uncertainty. The hour that followed was the longest of my life. Twice I nearly rushed the building, restrained only by Ezra and the judge's firm hands. Just when I'd decided to go in, regardless of the consequences, the saloon doors opened, and Sarah appeared. "He'll surrender to the federal marshal," she announced, "not to the local posse. He doesn't trust you not to lynch him before he reaches Denver." Judge Harmon nodded. "I can arrange that. Where are his men?" "Gone out the back. He's alone now." I didn't care about Mason or his surrender at that moment. I crossed to Sarah, searching her face. "Did he hurt you?" She shook her head. "No. He told me things about the mine, about Jacob." Her voice faltered. "He was there when the support beam fell. He heard Jacob call my name." Before I could respond, a shot rang out from inside the saloon. We all ducked instinctively, but no more shots followed. Ezra and 2 other men rushed inside, while I stayed with Sarah. "He's done it," Ezra called from the doorway. "Shot himself rather than face trial." Later, as we sat before the fire in our home, Sarah finally spoke of what Mason had told her. He said he never meant for anyone to die, just scare Jacob into silence. Things went wrong. The collapse was bigger than they planned. She looked up at me, tears finally breaking free. "He said Jacob's last words were my name." I knelt before her chair and took her hands in mine. "Jacob loved you. What you've done, bringing this truth to light, making Mason face what he did, honors that love." Sarah's tears fell freely now. "But it doesn't bring Jacob back. It doesn't heal my legs. Nothing's really changed." "You've changed," I said softly. "You came here broken and alone. And you built something, a school, a place in this community. You've changed the children who love learning because of you. You've changed this town that stood with you against Mason." I hesitated, then added, "You've changed me, Sarah, a man who thought he was done with living, done with caring." She lifted her gaze to mine. Vulnerability and strength mingled in her eyes. "What happens now? Hope." "Now," I said, "we rebuild." 3 days after Mason's suicide, the federal marshal arrived to collect his body and the evidence against his partners in Leadville. Judge Harmon had already left, but not before promising that justice would be served for all 18 victims' families. With Mason gone, Copper Gulch faced an uncertain future. The saloon stood empty. The schoolhouse remained a charred ruin. And Sarah and I existed in a fragile space between what we had been to each other and what we might become. "I've been offered a position," Sarah told me one morning as we shared coffee on the porch. "The territorial superintendent wants me to train teachers for frontier schools. Says my methods have proven that education can thrive even in difficult circumstances." My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. "You're leaving then?" "The position is in Denver. I would be gone for months at a time." I set down my cup, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "It's a good opportunity. You should take it. Is that what you want me to do?" I stood and walked to the porch rail, looking out over the land I'd worked for years, land that had felt empty until Sarah came. "What I want is for you to have choices, real ones, not forced by circumstance or charity." "Is that what you think this is? Charity?" Sarah wheeled herself closer, eyes flashing. "Do you think I've stayed because I had nowhere else to go? Didn't you? I stayed because here, with you, I found something I thought I'd lost forever. Purpose, respect." She paused. "Hope." "Sarah, no. You listen to me. Hope Jenkins. I've lived as half a person, not because of my legs, but because I was treated as less by doctors who spoke about me, not to me, by Mason and men like him who saw only what I couldn't do." Her voice softened. "Then you came along and saw me. Really saw me, not as someone to pity, but as someone who had value." I knelt before her chair, my heart pounding. "You have more value than anyone I've ever known." "Then ask me to stay," she whispered. "Not because I need you, not because you feel responsible for me. Ask me because you want me here, as I am. I love you, Sarah. I have since you first looked at me in that market square with your back straight and your eyes dry, refusing to beg for what should have been freely given." I took her hands in mine. "Stay, not in my guest room, not as my responsibility. Stay as my wife, if you'll have me." Sarah's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes." The next morning, we called a town meeting. With Mason gone, leadership had fallen to Ezra by default. But decisions needed to be made about the community's future. "The schoolhouse needs rebuilding," I said, standing before my neighbors. "And so does the saloon, though I propose a different purpose for it." "What do you have in mind?" Ezra asked. Sarah wheeled forward to join me. "A proper town hall, Teek," she said, "with a library attached, a place for community, not just commerce." Old Martha Parsons nodded approvingly. "Mason's money should go to something that benefits us all." "I'll contribute the lumber from my property," I offered, "and my skills as a builder." Others quickly joined in, offers of labor, materials, time. The energy in the room was palpable, a community finding its voice after too long under one man's shadow. As the meeting concluded, I cleared my throat. "There's one more announcement. Sarah has agreed to become my wife." A moment of stunned silence was followed by a cheer that seemed to shake the rafters. Martha rushed forward to embrace Sarah, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "About time," she declared. "Been watching you two dance around each other for months." We married in the autumn, when the aspen leaves had turned to gold and the mountains wore their first dusting of snow. The ceremony took place on our ranch, with Judge Harmon returning specially to officiate. I built a wheeled platform for the occasion, allowing Sarah to move down the aisle under her own power. She wore a gown of deep blue, her hair crowned with late-season wildflowers, her smile brighter than I'd ever seen it. "I take this man," she said when the time came, her voice clear and sure. "Not because I need him, but because I choose him, not to complete me, but to walk beside me, not to be my strength, but to remind me of my own." "And I take this woman," I answered, "not despite her scars, but with them, not to protect her, but to stand with her, not because she needs me, but because I need her courage, her wisdom, her heart." The schoolhouse rose again before the first heavy snows, larger than before, with wide doorways and gentle ramps. The former saloon transformed into a meeting hall with shelves of books along one wall, donations from Denver, books that many in Copper Gulch had never seen before. Word of Sarah's work spread through the territory. She declined the position in Denver, but other teachers came to learn from her, staying in our home and returning to their own communities with new ideas about education and accessibility. I expanded the ranch, hiring 2 of the older boys from Sarah's school to help with the livestock. Together, we designed a harness system that allowed Sarah to ride horseback independently, and soon she was accompanying me on my daily rounds, her strength and skill growing with each passing week. One evening, as snow fell softly outside our window, Sarah looked up from the book she was reading. "I had a letter from Leadville today. The mine owners have been convicted. Compensation will be paid to all the families, including mine." I set down the chair I'd been repairing. "That's good news." "There's more," she said, her voice catching slightly. "The doctor who treated me after the accident, he was wrong about my condition. The damage to my spine wasn't as complete as he thought." My heart quickened. "What are you saying?" Sarah set aside her book. "I've been feeling things. Hope. Small sensations in my right leg. The specialist in Denver says there's a chance, a small one, that with the right treatments, I might regain some function." I crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. "Sarah, that's wonderful." She touched my face gently. "But it changes nothing between us, whether I walk again or not. I am who I am. You married all of me." "I did," I agreed, taking her hand and pressing it to my heart. "The strongest woman I've ever known. And I married the man who saw that strength when no one else would," she whispered, as the snow continued to fall, blanketing our mountain home in quiet white. We held each other close, 2 people who had been broken by life and had found, in each other's cracks and scars, not weakness, but a different kind of wholeness. The story of Hope and Sarah Jenkins became something of a legend in those mountains. Not because of miraculous healing or perfect happy endings, but because we showed what was possible when people were valued for their strength rather than dismissed for their differences. No one wanted the paralyzed widow until I said she was stronger than I'd ever be. And in saying it, in believing it, I found my own strength again. Sometimes, that's all any of us need. Someone who sees past our brokenness to the courage it takes to keep living, to keep fighting, to keep hoping. In the end, that's what love is. Not a healing that erases our scars, but a witness who honors them as proof of our survival. In the shadows of mountains, where silver once drew desperate men, the true treasures were never found in mines, but in the courage to see worth where others saw only brokenness. The frontier wasn't just a place, but a boundary between what we are and what we might become. each of us carrying wounds that can either define or refine us. Perhaps strength isn't measured by what we can accomplish alone, but by how we help others discover their own resilience. And perhaps love isn't about finding someone whole, but recognizing that our fractures and scars are not flaws to be hidden, but proof of our survival. The most powerful choice we make isn't whether to stand or fall, but whether to see others clearly, beyond their limitations to their possibilities, beyond their pasts to their potential. In that recognition, we find not just their redemption, but our own. For in the end, it isn't our abilities that define us, but our willingness to keep moving forward despite what we've lost. And it isn't perfection we should seek, but the courage to remain unbroken in spirit even when life has broken everything else. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to follow more tales of courage, love, and redemption from America's forgotten corners.